Welcome back to Crime Podcastle for another Twisted Love Deep Dive.
Episode 20.
You got it. And this time we're taking you to a small town in Punjab, India,
Oh, okay.
back in 2018 for the Jaspal Singh love triangle case.
All right.
You know those stories that make you think, wow, truth is stranger than fiction?
Yeah, definitely.
This is one of those.
It's always interesting to see how these seemingly normal relationships can just take such a dark turn.
Right. It's like you picture Punjab, India, you think of peaceful villages, strong family ties, not this kind of shocking crime.
Yeah, and I think that's what really grabbed everyone's attention back then. It involved everyday people, but with some very powerful emotions underneath.
So let's start with our main players.
Okay.
Jaspal Singh,
Okay.
32 years old, hardworking farmer, seemed like a good guy to everyone who knew him,
All right.
and he was with Meena Kaur,
Okay.
a 28-year-old school teacher. They were the picture-perfect couple, long-term, stable, the type.
Yeah, but it's always fascinating to me how often these cases start with that perfect couple image.
Right.
Because there's always something bubbling beneath the surface.
Oh, definitely. And in this case, that bubbling came in the form of Aarti Verma.
Okay.
She was a 30-year-old beautician, new in town. And, well, Jaspal became infatuated.
Okay, classic love triangle forming then.
Yeah, you have the established couple, then someone new comes in, and bam, everything's thrown off balance.
Exactly. And then you get that mix of desire and jealousy, betrayal. It's like a recipe for disaster, those emotions.
It really is. And both Meena and Aarti eventually figure out what Jaspal's been up to.
Oh, I bet that wasn't pretty.
Not at all. Meena finds some, shall we say, incriminating text messages.
Uh-oh.
And Aarti starts realizing that Jaspal isn't as committed to her as she thought.
Wow. So you have two women both feeling betrayed, insecure.
Exactly. It's like a pressure cooker just waiting to explode.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how everyone's going to react, right?
Sure, some people might try to fix the relationship, cling to what they had.
Others might become vengeful, try to get rid of the competition.
And tragically, for Jaspal, things took a very dark turn.
What happened?
September 15th, 2018.
Okay.
His body's found in a field near his home.
Oh, no.
Multiple stab wounds. There was a struggle. It was a brutal end.
So they went from rumors of an affair to a murder investigation.
Exactly. Can you imagine the shock in that small town?
I bet everyone was a suspect in their minds.
Oh, for sure. And at first, the police thought it was a robbery gone wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But as they dug deeper, they uncovered Jaspal's double life.
Okay, so then everything shifts, right? They had to figure out who knew, who had a motive.
Yep. And they start with Meena.
Okay.
She admits she thought Jaspal was cheating, but absolutely denies having anything to do with his death.
I can't even imagine being in her shoes.
Grieving your partner while being a suspect in their murder.
Awful, just awful.
But then there's Aarti, and her behavior was raising all sorts of red flags.
Like what?
She seemed too calm, almost attached when they were questioning her. And then there were these late-night calls to a number they couldn't identify, right around the time Jaspal was killed.
Oh, so maybe she was directing her emotions into action instead of outwardly showing them.
And those phone records were key.
Really?
The police traced them to a hired hitman,
Oh, wow.
and he confessed to killing Jaspal
He admitted it just like that.
and said Aarti paid him to do it.
Wow. So now it's not just about proving the crime. They have to show she planned it.
Exactly. Premeditation, motive, that all becomes crucial. And of course, the trial was huge, media everywhere.
I bet.
The prosecution really focused on Aarti's jealousy, all that evidence with the hitman.
Yeah.
They painted her as a woman scorned, driven to this desperate act.
So what did the defense say?
They tried to say she was a victim herself, maybe manipulated or framed. They went after the hitman's credibility, tried to make the jury doubt him,
Classic strategy.
but it didn't work. In 2020, Aarti was convicted, both for the murder and the conspiracy to commit it.
Wow.
Life in prison.
And the hitman.
20 years.
It's just so tragic all around.
Jaspal loses his life, Meena's whole world is shattered, and Aarti's behind bars because of her choices.
Not to mention the impact on the whole community.
Yeah, let's take a moment to let all that sink in before we move on.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Life in prison for Aarti, 20 years for the hitman.
It really makes you think how one bad decision can affect so many people.
Absolutely. Not just those directly involved, but the whole town, too.
And while Aarti's story is definitely captivating, I can't stop thinking about Meena.
Yeah, what happens to the person left behind in all of this?
She's dealing with so much, the grief, the betrayal, and then the public scrutiny on top of it all.
It's like her whole world was a lie.
And from what we know, she just disappeared from public life, went back to her hometown, to try and heal away from everything.
That makes sense, though. Can you imagine all the whispers, the looks from people?
It must be so hard to move on without hanging over you.
I think sometimes the only way to heal is to get away from it all.
But then what happens to the town itself?
Yeah, good point.
I mean, this crime really shattered their sense of safety.
It showed them that even in a small, tight-knit community, bad things can happen.
I wonder if it made them change at all, like rethink their values or priorities.
I think it probably did, at least to some degree.
Maybe they started talking more about healthy relationships, how to recognize those warning signs.
Yeah, and the importance of seeking help when things start to go wrong.
So maybe, in a way, this tragedy helped prevent another one from happening.
It's possible, you never know.
Okay, so let's step back for a second. What are the big lessons from this case?
Well, I think one of the biggest is how important it is to deal with jealousy and rejection in a healthy way.
That's huge. Those emotions are so powerful.
They are, but we can't let them control us.
And communication is so key too, right?
Absolutely.
If partners can talk openly, honestly about how they're feeling, it builds trust.
It prevents resentment from building up.
And then there's recognizing when a relationship has turned toxic.
That's another big one.
Are there patterns of manipulation, control, abuse?
Those are serious red flags. You can't ignore them.
And if you see those signs in your own relationship or someone you care about, what should you do?
Get help. That's the most important thing.
There are therapists, support groups, even hotlines.
It's not weak to ask for help. It's actually really brave.
It's like this case is showing us that love can be amazing, but it can also be really destructive.
If it's mixed with unhealthy patterns and those intense emotions, it can turn dangerous.
So self-awareness, communication, healthy boundaries, those are all crucial.
They really are, and seeking help when you need it.
I think that's a good takeaway. We don't always have to figure things out on our own.
Definitely not.
This case is a powerful reminder of that.
Absolutely.
It shows that while love can bring us joy, it also has a dark side.
But by understanding how complex it is, working on communication, and getting support when we need it,
We can build relationships based on respect and trust.
and hopefully avoid those heartbreaking endings.
Now, as we move towards our final thoughts on this case, it's important to remember the real people affected by this tragedy.
Yeah.
We can analyze the details, talk about psychology and the law.
But we can never truly understand the pain everyone went through. Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the facts and the theories.
But at the end of the day, a life was lost. Families were torn apart.
And the community is left to pick up the pieces.
It makes you think about justice. Can there really be any closure after something this awful?
That's a tough question. What does justice even look like when everyone involved has suffered?
Right. Aarti going to prison doesn't bring Jaspal back or erase the pain for Meena.
It's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, it's a cycle of pain that's hard to break.
And in a case like this, where love and betrayal are so intertwined,
It forces us to look at ourselves, too.
definitely. Could we be blinded by love?
We're driven to do things we never thought possible out of jealousy.
It's uncomfortable to think about.
But this case is a reminder that we all have those dark possibilities within us. So self-awareness, communication, setting boundaries, those are so important.
And knowing when to ask for help.
That's key. Realizing we don't have to go through tough times alone.
There's no shame in reaching out.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Jaspal Singh love triangle case, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say even in the face of tragedy, there's always hope for healing.
We can learn and grow from these stories
And use those lessons to build stronger relationships.
and create a more compassionate world.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Twisted Love.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be back with another captivating case soon.
Until then, stay curious.
And remember, love can be twisted, but it doesn't have to be.